Thanks for your interest in parks planning with DCNR's Community Conservation Partnerships program. This presentation reviews parks planning projects only. If you are interested in a river conservation plan or trail feasibility study, you should watch the Rivers or Trails presentation on DCNR's YouTube channel. Planning projects are managed by the Community Parks and Recreation section, which is led by Sherry Motter. Our section also includes Small Community Program Specialist Trish Nudek, Equity Program Specialist Winnie Okello, Recreation and Conservation Advisors Rick Bogart, Olivia Braun, Ethan Strickler, and Mike Kuzar. This park planning session builds on information presented in the DCNR General Grant Overview. If you missed this overview, please be sure to find it on DCNR's YouTube channel because it provides a detailed explanation on how to assemble a high-quality grant application. Before we dive into the planning projects, let's just review some general application information. Applications are accepted between January 12th and April 30th of 2026. This application window affords time to provide a complete application at the time of submission. Planning applications compete regionally, and each application is scored by two people, a regional advisor and a grant project manager. Scores are based upon ready-to-go checklist items, scope of work, detailed budget, and criteria question responses. The grants will be awarded in score order from highest to lowest. Eligible applicants include municipalities, municipal authorities, councils of government, conservation districts, school districts, and nonprofits. Eligible projects include planning for recreation and conservation facilities. Funding is prioritized for plans that rehabilitate an existing park or facility or addresses recreation for all. For most planning types, DCNR offers an example scope of work and guidelines. Applicants should tailor this scope of work prior to obtaining quotes from at least two qualified consultants. The grant matches dollar for dollar. So for a project that costs $50,000, the applicant will request $25,000 while providing a match of $25,000. If awarded, the grant contract provides 3 years to complete the planning project. DCNR grants can help fund the following types of plans: a master site development plan, comprehensive recreation park open space and greenway plans, conservation management or stewardship plans, swimming pool complex feasibility study, or an indoor recreation facility feasibility study. Before we go into detail about these various types, let's review the basics of planning. Quality planning looks at where we are through review of data and inventories, where we are going through public engagement and community visioning, and how we get there with an action plan that defines timelines, costs, drawings, and funding strategies. To guide this process, all community recreation conservation planning grants require the following steps. First, develop a detailed scope of work. This scope of work helps the community define where they are, where they want to go, and to the extent of action planning. Once developed, it will be used to obtain accurate quotes from qualified consultants. DCNR provides scope of work guidelines and templates and cost estimate checklists for most project types. Once awarded, grantees are encouraged to use their scope of work to create a formal request for proposal that will help you bring a qualified consultant on board to complete the plan. DCNR offers guidance documents to grantees to help them select a qualified consultant or consultant team. An important part of planning will be public engagement. DCNR offers a public participation guide that provides a variety of public participation strategies, including surveys, stakeholder meetings, key person interviews, and more. All of this is to generate the final deliverable that provides actionable recommendations and may include site development drawings. The most common project we assist is a master site development plan. A master site development plan is a site-specific plan for development, rehabilitation, use, and management of a park and recreation facility that is owned or controlled by the applicant. A qualified consultant will inventory existing services, facilities, access, resources, and organizational capacity, and will engage the public to understand community vision and future needs. A narrative report summarizes the results, and a site drawing provides design and costs to address the established priorities. Typical awards for master site development plans range from $20,000 to $75,000. Be sure to review the Bureau's Master Site Development Plan Scope of Work and Public Participation Guide for any additional information as you prepare your application. Comprehensive recreation park, open space, and greenway plans review the long-term development, use, and management of park, recreation, open space, or greenway system. It can be completed at a municipal, county, or regional scale. Qualified consultants will inventory existing services, facilities, access, resources, and organizational capacity, and engage the public to understand community vision and future needs. The final deliverable is a narrative report that establishes priorities, actions, and costs and timelines for implementation. Be sure to use the DCNR guideline example scope of work to prepare your cost estimate. Awards for these types of plans can range from $30,000 to $150,000. Comprehensive plans often identify priority rehabilitation projects. These projects often lead to master site development plans discussed in the previous slide. DCNR helps to fund conservation, management, and stewardship plans. Typically, a qualified consultant analyzes the conservation and management of natural area and critical habitats, as well as public access and passive recreational opportunities. Then they establish priorities, actions, and cost estimates for implementation as appropriate. As with all plans, public participation is required by DCNR. The deliverable is a narrative report, which may include a site development drawing. The Bureau doesn't provide a scope of work for these types of projects because they are very wide-ranging. We do, however, encourage collaboration with a conservancy or a land trust to develop a project-specific scope of work. For larger capital investments, a feasibility study is a prerequisite for consideration of DCNR development applications. The feasibility study will include structural assessment of existing features, an analysis of market characteristics, legal and financial capability to acquire, develop, rehabilitate, manage, or sustain such a facility. Public engagement is essential to determine community support for this investment. A swimming pool complex may include pool, bathhouse, concessions, parking, accessibility, and other site amenities. An indoor recreation facility may include a recreation center, gymnasium, indoor ice rink, indoor multi-sport complex, parking, accessibility, and other site amenities. Feasibility plan applications focus on one site only. The deliverable is a narrative report that may contain drawings. Be sure to use the appropriate DCNR guideline and example scope of work to prepare your cost estimate. So what is this scope of work that we keep mentioning? The scope of work is a detailed narrative that describes the work elements and tasks that you'll be asking a consultant to complete. It informs the consultant on the level of importance and effort for the work elements. For example, a community with a growing and diverse population may seek a more intensive public engagement effort to ensure underrepresented populations are heard. This would increase the hours spent on public engagement. For a comprehensive plan, a community may prioritize walking and pedestrian connections, so their scope of work may also incorporate an active transportation element. Each community has different challenges, needs, and vision, and so the scope of work should be tailored to your community. DCNR provides guidelines and examples of scope of works for applicants in developing their own unique scope of work because no two communities are the same. But why is this needed? We find that a clearly defined scope of work informs the consultant's cost estimates for the application, and poorly defined scope of works create inaccurate cost estimates, which lead to underfunded projects. So when we're preparing your grant application, DCNR suggests the following. Really think about the purpose, goals, and objectives of your planning project. Engage with your regional advisor and review DCNR's guidelines and example scope of works for your project type. Share your project-specific scope of work with at least 2 qualified consultants, and request that each consultant provide an itemized cost for each of the scope work elements. We cannot accept lump sum quotes. And then use these quotes to create your grant request. You can find a wealth of resources by clicking on the More Information button next to the Community Recreation and Conservation Planning heading on the grant portal. This takes you to general introductions of planning types, tutorial videos, and guidance documents such as planning program forms, documents, frequently asked questions, project criteria questions, etc. Ready-to-go status for planning applications is based upon the following. A clear and detailed scope of work should be uploaded with your realistic budget. The budget should be detailed and consistent with the scope of work. The match commitment letter should detail the source and amount of the match provided for the project. For master site development plans and feasibility studies for existing facilities, the applicant must own the project site or control it through a lease with a minimum term of 25 years. Be sure to plan for and build in sufficient time to obtain the all required documents by the application deadline of April 30th. Check in with your regional advisor early to ensure your application is complete. We've reviewed how to develop a scope of work in prior slides, so let's discuss how to develop the application budget. As mentioned, the DCNR's planning guidance documents include cost estimate checklists like the one shown here. These are templates that can be modified as needed to identify the things your community wants to accomplish. As discussed earlier, DCNR recommends sending the project-specific scope of work and the cost estimate checklist to at least 2 consultants that have experience doing the type of tasks identified. Obtaining accurate, detailed quotes is an essential step as they are used to build the grant application budget. On the right-hand side is an example of a budget template for planning projects. Use your consultant quotes to create a project budget. A detailed budget template is available on the grants portal for download. The cost categories are as follows. Contracted professional services are provided under a contract or a professional service agreement. Donated professional services are provided at no cost to the applicant by a professional qualified to perform the work. Other project costs, such as cash costs and non-cash values, may include costs for public advertisements, meeting room rentals, document production, etc. Your budget should be itemized to reflect the scope of work elements. If awarded, your grant contract will not start until 2027, so be sure to take that into consideration as well. Additional information may also be found in DCNR's Frequently Asked Questions document. Grant applications are scored out of a maximum of 100 points. Points are earned through demonstration that your project is ready to go, answers to the grant criteria questions, consistency with local, county, or regional plans, and partnerships. Our grant program is competitive, and planning projects compete regionally with development projects, so every point matters. During the general grant overview, the criteria questions were reviewed. For planning applications, most of the questions are the same as presented in this overview, with the exception of question 6. For planning projects, we ask the applicant to describe the applicant's capacity to implement the plan or study once it is complete. It is best to cite specific examples of past successes. This can be illustrated in a few ways. The applicant may have successfully implemented elements of a local comprehensive plan or previously managed state or federal grants. Or the applicant may have partnered with other organizations or friends groups to implement plans and complete high-priority projects. As we end this planning breakout, here are a few tips for submitting a high-quality and successful application. Be sure to contact your Bureau Regional Advisor now. It is never too early. Involve a qualified design consultant early in the process and solicit a detailed cost estimate to help determine your grant request. Be sure to explain how the plan or study will address applicable Bureau priorities when answering the criteria questions. And remember to check DCNR's YouTube channel for additional information about our grants. We encourage you to revisit these presentations as you start your application. Thanks for attending this planning session. Good luck.